Happy Tuesday. We are working through John 14, and today's reading really starts in verse 8 and goes all the way through the end of this section in verse 14. But I just want to focus on the first few verses because I think there's something here that may be speaking to you in a different way, I hope, this week. Phillip is the one who opens this conversation. He's drafting off of something that Jesus has just said that Matt talked about yesterday. But in verse 8, Phillip says, "Lord, show us the Father. That will be enough for us." Have you ever had a thought like this? For me, I think about if only I could just see God, right? With my own eyes, if I could just see God physically in this world, I would know that God exists. There'd be no more doubt in my mind. That's my chief desire, is just to see God. We're not the first ones to feel this way. And my guess is that you probably have had moments where you wish you could see God physically too. In the Old Testament, it talks all the time about seeing God, except for maybe not in the way you think. Because actually, Exodus 33, for example, says no one can see God and live. And when Moses goes up onto the mountaintop to be with God, to get the commandments of the Torah, the law, he is hidden in a rock and God passes by, but he's not actually able to look upon God. We're told if you actually look upon God, you can't survive that kind of experience. No one is able to see God. That's the tradition that Philip was raised in. That's what he would have believed about God. But yet here he says, "Lord, show us the Father. That will be enough for us." That's all we want, is to be able to truly experience, to be able to see God and know God for ourselves. And what's really fascinating about this is what Jesus says next. He says, "Don't you know me, Philip? We've spent all this time together, even after I've been among you such a long time. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." You see, we are fortunate to live in the time that we do, Philip was too, where we actually get to experience God through the person of Jesus. Before, all they had was the Hebrew Bible. They had the first books of the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures. That's how they experienced God. We have that. Plus, Jesus says we have him. It's like Philip is saying, "God, or Jesus, show us God. We want to see him." And Jesus goes, "I'm right here. Take a look." And you and I, we have that same ability to just take a look. That's the way that Jesus says leads to life eternal. The full, abundant life is the way following him. We experience God, we see God, we recognize the fullness of who God is through the person of Jesus. And so if you've ever wanted to know more about God or to experience God or to see God with your own eyes, the best we can come to in this life here on this earth until we get to heaven and can look upon God face to face is through the person of Jesus. And so my invitation to you this week is pretty simple. It's a short video. What does that look like for you this week? I want you to just spend some time really thinking about that. How can you practically look on God, see God for yourself through the person of Jesus? Maybe for you, that means actually spending some time with Jesus this week in whatever way you feel the most comfortable, whether it be continuing to read every day or maybe even reading a little bit more about the life of Jesus or how the first Christians experienced Jesus. Maybe for you, that's spending some time in prayer, just talking with God. Or maybe even for you, it's spending some time in worship, getting to spend some time with God, spend some time with Jesus through the songs and helping the lyrics of those songs to jog our thoughts about God and our thoughts about Jesus. However it works for you this week, how can you gaze upon the Father through Jesus? Because that's what he tells us in today's reading, is that if we want to know who the Father is, then we just have to look at the Son. And how fortunate are we, again, that we live in a time where we have things like the Gospel of John, where we get to know who Jesus is so that we can better understand who God the Father is. The rest of this week's reading, and really this farewell speech that we're in John, continues to tell us more about what that looks like. So we'll keep talking about this, but for now, just spend some time thinking about how you can get to spend a little bit more time with Jesus this week so you can better understand who the Father is.